All right, so today we are getting you ready for a big test. The test is coming on Tuesday, and the part we're talking about today is the simplifying kind, because there's simplifying in proving, there's simplifying in solving equations, and some of the problems just say simplify. So obviously simplifying is huge in this. So how could we make simplifying questions? Well, let's say that you were the one who was making the test. What you'd do is you would take the trig identity sheet that you all have in front of you that we just did for a quiz, right? It says trig identities on top. Have it out. If you don't have it out, get it out. On that sheet, you would find things to substitute out. And actually, you start with the answer. I'll give you an example. I can start and say, I want the answer to the simplified question to come out to sine squared of theta. Then you go back up one step, like up a little higher, like what would this have had to be before it turns into sine squared of theta? Well, there's a lot of different choices. You can look on the sheet and find anything that I could have had before that that would have simplified to sine squared theta. For example, 1 over what? 1 over cosecant could have been right there. Or what else? 1 minus something could have been in there. 1 minus cosine squared of theta. Did you get where I went with that? So now, if the problem had been the green question, then the answer would have been sine squared theta. Now I can morph that even further and say 1 minus, and instead of cosine squared, I could make it trickier by substituting something in there. What could I put instead of cosine? 1 over secant. Do you get how the red one's answer would have been the green one? And the green one's answer would have been the blue one at the end? All right, so now we can make an even trickier question by going above the red one, and I'll do it in black, and say instead of 1, what could I put on your sheet that could be put in instead of 1? Cosine squared plus sine squared, because that's equal to 1. And then I put minus 1 over secant squared theta. You see how the black one looks like a test question? That's how you could have made a test question. And then the kid's first response hopefully would have been to go, well, I know that's equal to 1, so they'd have put a 1 there. And then I know secant is, or 1 over secant is really cosine, so you'd have put that. And then I notice 1 minus cosine, that's really sine, and you got that. So what I want you to do right now is to just take 2 seconds and start with an answer of secant theta. And I want you to think of, go back up 2 steps, like make what it could have been here, and then make what it could have been here. Take a second right now in your notes and make me a question that would have an answer of secant. Don't put it on the blank sheet of paper. This is in your notes. The blank sheet of paper I had you tear out, that's for something else. You can use the back side of your trig identities if you want to for scratch paper. The blank paper, leave it blank for now. So you think there's nothing else you could do? All right. Could you do 1 plus tangent? No, that's only if they're squared. But there's other things you could substitute. Remember the ones where they're negative or not? Those are the odd even kind. So in other words, let's say I had sine of negative theta. I could replace that with negative sine of theta. You could do that kind of a thing. Don't forget about those. You're right. Maybe you can figure that out. It's okay. I've been gone for a few days, so that's a tough one. You'd have to have 2 negatives so that the negatives would cancel. All right. So let's see who figured out what I'm talking about. Who can tell me what to put in this circle? Give me an option. Who could think of something, some way to make that a little trickier up here? Okay. You cannot substitute, somebody offered to substitute 1 minus sign for that. Can't do that. That's only if they're squared. That only works on Pythagoreans, which are only squared. Okay, Bowman's got an idea. Okay, so cosine of theta is the same thing as cosine negative theta. Very good. And you could replace, okay, I think you're giving me an alternative. Instead of cosine of theta, I could have put sine of pi over 2 minus theta, right? Because isn't that red thing the same exact thing as this right here? Uh-huh. See how it's looking more tricky? And then on top, what could you replace the 1 with? We did that last time. Right there, we could have replaced that with sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta. See how it's going to look a lot more complicated now? All over sine pi over 2 minus theta. All right. So moral of the story is you can make questions that are simplify questions by starting with the end in mind, starting with the answer. What you're going to do right now, and the reason I had you tear out that blank sheet of paper, is you're going to take a minute and make one of these right here, except don't tell anybody what you're starting with for an answer, because then in a moment I'll tell you who to give your little test to. You're making a test. That blank sheet of paper that I had you take out? Where's your blank sheet of paper? I don't see a blank sheet of paper. All right. On that blank sheet, yes, everybody in the classroom should have torn out a blank sheet of paper by now. You're going to make a little test for them. You're only going to make one question, just like I showed you how to make one question. Figure out what answer you want it to be ahead of time. Start with that, like I just did, and build it up. And the only rule is that you can only do 4 substitutions, because you could make these ungodly, awful hard, and I don't want it to be impossible. So at the most, I want you to do 4 substitutions so that your question doesn't get too awful. Okay? And your answer should be just one thing. It can be squared or not. So your answer should be just like tangent squared theta, or, you know, secant, or whatever you want. But make one question. And when you're done making, I mean, show your work and everything so you can prove later what the question is. You're not making the, you're not listening. Okay, first of all, you have to make the key like this. Then, when you're done with that, you copy only the question onto that piece of paper, and then you're not going to hand it to whoever you feel like. I'm going to tell you who to give it to. All right, please follow those directions. I'll hit pause while you do that. Okay, so now you are handing your question that you have made to the kid who sits to your left. People that don't have anybody on their left, recycle it around to the other side. Okay, so for one kid who didn't have one made for them because their person had been absent, we did this one. You want to help me do it? So what does this turn into? Cotangent. So what does that turn into? 1 over cotangent, so tangent. So now it's tangent. And now what? What's on top? So it's 1 over tangent, so then what does that turn into? So the final answer was cotangent. Did you get cotangent? All right, good. Now, quiet please. Thank you. All right, I didn't expect these to be incredibly hard ones or anything. We'll do some more of the challenging ones tomorrow, but today was meant to be just a chance to think about these things a little more in a different way by trying to make up your own problem. All right, how many of you were able to solve the problem given to you? Raise your hand, please, nice and high so I can see. That's almost everybody. Good. Now, on the, so a few last thoughts here before I give you some time to work on the new homework assignment I've given you. There's simplifying in each kind of question. The simplifying that we just did right here, for instance, what if this whole thing had said equals -1? Well, then I'd have to simplify it all down, get cotangent of theta, and that would be equal to -1. Well, cotangent of theta equals -1 is asking you for degrees. Do we ever do like degrees, like cotangent? Could you even type that into a calculator, cotangent of theta? No. Okay. So then I could do, what could I do to get, you're right, calculators aren't allowed in this test. So how could I get this to something that I could actually do? Nope. If I put 1 over this side and 1 over that side, what would I have now? Tangent of theta is equal to, what's 1 over -1? Now I can do it. Okay, so now I need a degree. So how many degrees is that? Well, I kind of know that when the two sides divided by each other equal a 1, that means the two sides were equal to each other. Okay, so it's probably a 45-degree angle, but if I wanted to reconstruct it, I'd go like this. All students take calc, and where is tangent negative? That one, and where else? That one. So tangent is negative over here, and I don't know what the degree is, so I put a theta, and then I say -1, this is opposite over adjacent, so the opposite side's -1, the adjacent side is 1. No, it's the other way around. That one has to be negative. There we go. Okay. How is that possible? Oh, but it is. No. How long is this side right here? You got to recognize this triangle, people. Square root of 2. So this is a 45, 45, 90. So that's a 45-degree angle. Is the answer? Shh, quiet. Okay, I need to pause for a second. Why is that the square root of 2? Because, okay, what part don't you understand? Okay, wouldn't you agree that this side here and this side here are the two that are involved with tangent? Okay, and when I divide those two signs, those two numbers, don't I have to get a negative? As long as I take the two sides divided by each other, I'll have a negative. Now, you're annoyed because the negative's up there. Couldn't the negative be down there just as well? Okay, so now back to this. This side is a square root of 2. That means it's a 45, 45, but the answer is not 45. It's this. Remember this? So what would that be? 135. That's one of my answers. The other answer is, I'll draw in green down here. And that's also going to be a 45. It's going to take me a lot less time to figure this one out. I take all the way around would be 360 minus the 45. 360 minus 45 is... Okay, so there's just a quick reminder on solving. And the other kind I like to just think of as a simplified question. Big complicated thing, I don't know. It'll tell you the answer is like sine of theta. And if it's a prove question, all I have to do is simplify like normal. I just happen to know what the answer is supposed to come out to be. That's all. You just think of it like you already know the answer is going to be sine, and you just got to keep on working at it until you get it to be equal to sine. That's what a prove question is like. All right, so those are the main kinds of questions. And obviously, judging by the results, like mostly 24s and 25 out of 25, you seem to know your identities well. You know how to swap things back and forth, come out of your identities and put them into here and replace this with something else. All right, I think you're getting everything you need. Tomorrow you're going to have a little homework quiz to make sure you're getting the solving part and the proving part. We'll have like one of each kind of question as a little homework quiz. And then your homework is going to be the actual review worksheet for the test. Then you come back Monday, and on Monday we go over the ones I assigned, and then you have a few more left on the sheet that I haven't assigned yet. You'll finish those, and then your test is Tuesday. All right? I'm expecting good things out of this test. I know it's hard stuff, but we've reviewed it enough, and if you've been staying with me on this, I really believe that even though it's the hardest test of the year and it involves a lot of stuff, you can get your A's if you work at this. This is not something you should write off and say, this stuff's hard. I get a C and I'll be okay. You can get the A, and I'm hoping I see lots of A's. I'd love to see that. To say